The year is 1962. Newly formed Communist Cuba is now allied with Soviet Russia, the United States' biggest rival in the battle of capitalism versus communism, freedom versus restriction. The United States learns of Soviet Russia putting intercontinental ballistic missiles armed with nuclear warheads on Cuban mainland, only 90 miles from U.S. shores and within very close proximity of many United States major cities. We wanted to learn how the Cuban Missile Crisis affected the citizens of the United States and the nation as a whole. So we talked to Donald Rinaldi, a retired lawyer born in 1940, who at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis was part of the Marine Corps Reserves. We asked him three main questions, the first of which was, as a part of the Marine Corps Reserves, how was the general attitude among you, your unit, and the United States as a whole during the crisis?
As far as the Marine Corps Reserves were concerned, 4th Division of the Marine Corps, and what we were going to be doing was we were going to be put on active duty. We were going to replace an active duty unit. But once we got activated, it would become more intense because we'd have to bring it up to the level of the people who were serving at that time as regular and not reservists. So the attitude was that, we were trained to a certain point, but we knew that we had to go and get more advanced training. But also, it was going to be disruptive to our lives because we, the reservists, it was 2 weekends a month, 2 weeks during the summer. So all of a sudden, we had to uproot ourselves, and the attitude was, yeah, we signed up for this and we have to go, but we were a little bit skeptical because of the effect it would have on our families. We were in kind of pins and needles, and then the whole thing resolved itself, right, and we didn't have to go. So, although we were worried and concerned about the effect on our personal lives, we knew that if we had to go, we had to go, and that was it. So that worked out. The United States as a whole, I think, is that they thought that this could turn into a nuclear war. Right. When Castro took over, and it was a communist country, so it was a communist country 90 miles away with missiles. Right. So naturally, the country didn't know what was going to happen because of all the characters. It was a tense 13 days.
Right. Such sentiments of nervousness and anxiety are reflected in not only the accounts of the time period, but also the facts. During this time period, Kennedy had B-52s loaded with nuclear bombs on runways ready to go at a moment's notice towards Cuba or towards the USSR. Next, we asked Donald what the initial reactions and impressions were of Kennedy's actions and diplomacy towards the USSR.
Kennedy did two things. The Bay of Pigs, getting the Cuban nationals to the United States and having the CIA train them, then send them to Cuba and try to overthrow the Castro regime was a dismal failure. So on that point, when that came out, I don't think the country was happy with President Kennedy at the time. However, I think the country felt that he stood up to Gorbachev and the Russians and negotiated this deal and averted a catastrophe. What he didn't accomplish is that Cuba stayed a communist country to this day. Right. So he didn't solve all the problems, but at least he averted that nuclear confrontation.
The hesitant satisfaction of Kennedy's actions were also reflected within the U.S. population. According to one study, 84% of the United States approved of his actions, while only 4% disapproved and 12% had no opinion towards the matter. Next, we decided to ask Donald our third and final question, which was, what were the lasting effects of the crisis on the United States as a whole?
The United States itself, I think it kind of set up the ground rules of what our relationship was going to be with Russia going forward. And we knew Russia had nuclear capability, the United States had it, so they had to both tread very carefully. And I think that developed the whole nuclear policy going forward.
Just as Donald said, the newly formed nuclear policy was embodied by a direct hotline between the U.S. and the USSR. It was created due to part of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it helped mediate and ease communication and negotiation regarding matters such as the Cuban Missile Crisis. It also, soon after its creation, helped sign 2 treaties regarding nuclear weaponry. After researching the crisis and having this interview with Donald, I think we can all confidently say that the Cuban Missile Crisis's effect upon citizens was to make them much more wary of Russia's capabilities and what they could do with the help of other communist nations. In terms of the nation as a whole, just like Donald said, it created the nuclear policy of being much more wary and having a lot more negotiation and diplomacy in order to solve these issues peacefully.